Hello, I'm Teri Cargill, and welcome to my show, Talking with Teri. Here we will learn how to master our mindset in life, business, and beyond. All family relationships naturally go through phases and stages. Today we have Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, a child and family therapist, with us today to share some strategies on how we can rebuild our family relationships even after surviving the holidays. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited because we just came off the holidays, and so what a great conversation to start off, talking about even just rebuilding some of those relationships. So tell me, what are some of those early indicators that you can see that a family is is having a hard time or in need of support?
So usually communication starts to break down. So it can start off just as easy as, let's say, between the partners, mom and dad or whatever, two moms, two dads, and just, oh, I thought you were doing that. Oh, no, and I thought you were doing that, right? So then you start to miss out on those kinds of, just basic communication skills. And then after that, you start to see it with kids. And you start to see that they maybe aren't spending as much time around the family. They're spending more time in their rooms.
Yeah.
So it's like, first it starts usually with communication, and then it's actually just the time spent with one another isn't quality, isn't even quantity. And usually that's when families say, I feel like we're off track and we want to get back on.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to start to recognize it when it's happening early versus when those relationships have deteriorated to a point where, and for yourself, I mean, you're a child and family therapist, and oftentimes, and I know when I was in the therapist chair, people would come in when it's too late, right? And it would come and when it's just like years and years of baggage, and it's harder. It's not impossible, but it's harder to get through all of it, versus being proactive about it.
Yeah, I think, and it's so easy for that to happen because it starts off maybe subtly, and then people start to kind of have their roles and identities even within the family functioning, which might turn to family dysfunctioning. And so it is subtle, usually it's slow, and it usually does take sort of something big to happen to say, wow, not only are we off track now, but maybe we've been for a while, and trying to go back and retrace that can be challenging too. So that's why a lot of people do go to family therapy, sometimes at those points, because they realize, gosh, I don't know if I can even remember how and when this started.
Yeah. So it's easy to place blame, but what can we do to take responsibility for our own part in the breakdown of that communication?
Another hard one, right? It's easier to blame others. It's easier to see faults in others or to say, oh, well, you should have done this or you should have said this. So I love the idea of families having self-awareness practices where you say, what's the lesson learned?
Yeah.
What's the lesson learned in that experience? And that doesn't have to always be just family dynamics. That can also be just when your kid comes home and they tell you a story about something that happened. Maybe somebody wasn't nice to them at school, or they had a miscommunication with a teacher. Always to say, so I wonder, what's the lesson learned in that? What was your role in that? Starting that practice early pays off in the long run, because then that means it's just always your default.
Yeah.
What did I learn from this, and what was my role in this?
And I think also, when we start taking personal ownership, in our part of how we're playing it out, and there's a great equation. It's E plus R equals O, and it's the event plus the response equals the outcome. And so the event we have no control over, but the response, how we react or how we respond, we absolutely have control over. And that is going to play a big part on the outcome. And so having that personal responsibility of going, okay, how am I showing up in this relationship? How am I playing a part in this? Can be such a game changer. So E plus R equals O. All right, so what is a strategy that you can share with our families in helping them create healthy boundaries?
So creating healthy boundaries is great because, first of all, it's gotten so much press lately. I feel like this is a big topic probably over the last couple of years. And so I just want to acknowledge that, even people now probably know what creating boundaries means, where a couple years ago they might have been like, what are you exactly talking about? So, but creating boundaries really, it means that you are at times going to be feeling uncomfortable. So I always say, if you felt uncomfortable, you probably were setting a boundary.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other person, they learn. It's like we're teaching other people how we expect to be treated and what their limits are, because we set our own limits. So what I like to say about boundaries is that they're not rigid. They can be fluid at times. They're hard to do, but you just want to start off. And sometimes you want to practice that. It could be with a boss. It could be with a family member. It could be with an in-law. And you probably want to practice, because it should be actually short and simple, like having your one-liner. That's not going to work for me today.
Yeah.
Like whatever it is, you just practice it, like you practice and practice. So most people that I work with really struggle with setting boundaries.
Yeah.
So I really like to say to them, just have like a one-liner and practice it. Even if you feel like maybe that was slightly out of context for what was happening, who cares? It's your one-liner.
Yeah.
It starts to come out. And you will get the dividends, because you'll see people will be, oh, okay, I bumped up against your boundary. I know what you like and what you don't, or how much to push and how much not to, so I'm going to take a step back. So it's really quite effective, but it does require a lot of practice and knowing that you're going to go into it, there's going to be discomfort.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to piggyback on that for a second, because I want to also throw in there, like from an energetic perspective, one of the things that I love helping support people on and setting energetic boundaries. And this can be really fun. You can actually just imagine, like even when in working with some clients and they know they're going to go into like a tough situation, what I'll invite them to do from an energetic perspective, so I'm going to invite everyone listening to do this too, is just close your eyes just for a second and just imagine like putting yourself into, I like to personally put myself into like a bubble, and it's iridescent, and it's just allowing love and light to penetrate that bubble. And so when you show up, you're not taking on other people's stuff energetically, and it's a way to protect. Now, there's some people that will, imagine like, roses floating around them. Or I had a client one time, and she put in, she imagined that she was like an astronaut, and so she would, have the outfit come up, and then like, and just to set the boundary of just energetics, just like, protecting our energy. And it changes the energy, it changes the essence of how we show up. So in addition to the practical setting the boundaries, which is so key in, I feel like just maintaining ease in our lives, right? And it can be done, right? It can be taught and it can be done.
And it's often not taught.
And it's important to start early, right? We don't have to have conflict before we start setting these boundaries and establishing those boundaries. And it's such a great way to fall back on,
Yes, I would say there's a couple of things. The way you put it in terms of energetically in the bubble, a lot of times just my prompter statement when I'm working with people is just, so how are you going to protect your peace?
I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and then I introduce that so that in subsequent conversations I'll say, wow, you really protected your peace, or you weren't able to protect your peace. So it's just a sort of a thread that I use. But with kids, it's so easy to start early with them if you're conscious of it, because A, kids are boundary pushers, and B, you have all these opportunities when they're toddlers to do that.
Practice, and it goes back to the practicing, right? Being consistent and practicing, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. Okay, so what can be done to repair and heal our family who's going through some hard times?
So from a therapist perspective, I think when families need to heal, just getting together in a space, just being physically together. That already starts that connection. Talk about energy, right? And the energy might be really unbalanced when you're first in a room together. But so the first piece is getting together is really important. The second one is to really reduce or completely eliminate distractions. So we're going to get together. We're going to have a hard conversation. There's going to be no phones, no iPads. There's not going to be anything to disrupt this, right? Because when you get uncomfortable too, you tend to go to your phone and you can get disengaged. And I would say the third thing is particularly for parents, is you want to sit in silence sometimes. Silence can say a lot. Silence can bond people. Silence in and of itself could bring you to tears or emotion. So don't fill the time always. Don't over talk. Don't feel like you just have to, have the right things even to say or answer. Know that we can sit in silence together. Yeah, I know it's uncomfortable, but let's see what the silence speaks to each and every one of us. That's one thing. And the other thing is just to say, if you just listened more than you spoke, I wonder how much you could learn. So going into it intentionally, maybe for the person who doesn't talk very much, their intention is to share more. And maybe for the parent who might lecture or feel like they've been lecturing for a while, okay, go into that space with just the intention to listen and learn.
Oh, I love that. Okay, that's a powerful place for us to pause for just a moment. We're going to stop and come back to that thought in just a moment with Dr. Sheryl Ziegler. Want more support in creating your success story? My products can help. Check them out. First, I have my book, Be the Magic of You, Tools to Transform Your Life. And in it, I have over 70 different tools to help reprogram your brain. Next, I have my Daily Intentions Planners. They help you create without forcing it. They combine brain science and universal laws. In addition to my book and planners, I also have 2 card decks you're sure to love, designed to support you to reconnect with your purpose, power, and potency. I also offer 2 special packages. The first is the Success Package. In it, you'll have my book and a year's supply of planners to help you bundle and save. Next is my favorite, the Empowerment Package. You can supercharge your life and business by getting all the products at one low price. But wait, there's more. I also offer a yearly subscription called the 7-Figure Business Box. Each quarter, you'll receive a physical box mailed to your home, a live 2-hour intensive training, an hour-long fireside chat with an expert in the industry, a guidebook packed with even more resources. To order anything you see here, just go to my website, talkingwithteri.com. Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Sheryl Ziegler. We're talking about how to repair our family relationships. Now, I'm curious, is there any times when you would, it's okay to distance yourself from family members?
Yeah, this is a big conversation, especially after holidays.
Yes.
Where a lot of times, family members, and when I think about this, I think usually at this point when you're probably, extended, right?
Yeah.
You're older. There are times, it's very sad, but there are times where having to distance yourself or even cut yourself out of a family dynamic, or even, could be the whole family, but hopefully maybe just 1 or 2 people, has to happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in those cases, it's because there's some sort of toxicity, there's emotional abuse, maybe there was a history of other forms of abuse. And when you realize that, if the other person can't repair, so in relationships, you tear and repair. But if there's tear after tear and there isn't repair, sometimes it is what is best. Which is really to be able to distance yourself, physically, emotionally. I, of course, always try to encourage family members to try to work things out. But I think in the most sort of extreme cases, it is a possibility and a necessary part of growing and developing and protecting your peace and your own health.
So is there healthier ways to emotionally cut ties?
Yeah, communicating. So I think a lot of people might cut ties, but it's like, well, they disappeared. I have no idea why. They just sort of, something happens, they've had it, and they just stop returning phone calls, they stop replying to invitations to things, they stop calling on birthdays. But I don't think that's the healthiest. Because I think if someone is going to cut themselves out of their family's life, there really does need to be I'm not being reactive. I've thought this through. Maybe I've talked this through. Yes, so that the family members know this wasn't just, we got into a big argument
and we're done.
We're done. It's like, gosh, I've been dealing with this for a lot of years and I've done everything that I know how to. And still I feel X, Y, and Z when I'm around you.
Yeah.
I don't feel heard. I feel belittled. I feel abused. And I've done everything I can, and I'm going to need space. I think that's really different, even for the person doing it, rather than just saying, yeah, I've had it, and then just kind of stepping out.
Yeah. And I think, I want to add a little nugget here is anytime from an energetic perspective, anytime, and not necessarily when we're cutting off a physical relationship, even though it could be used in that manner, or just any time. One of the routines that I actually do on a regular basis is every morning I have this process where I just emotionally clear the emotional cords, energetic cords. And so one of the things that I teach people to do is, here's the saying, is I revoke, recant, destroy, and uncreate my relationship to everything and everyone. And it's an emotional, energetic cord clearing. And so it can just, because what happens oftentimes in a relationship is that we get those emotional cords. They're invisible. We don't see them, but we experience them. And so, too, if just practicing, whether you're any type of relationship, it can be really a positive thing to help energetically cut the cords and reestablish that healthy energy between each other. And so I just want to share that real quick. But let me ask you this real quick. What message do you have for families who haven't received help yet, but how do we help support them moving forward?
People who haven't received support, but there's something happening.
Yeah.
I think an inward practice to start with is really helpful. I love encouraging people to journal, to get in touch with your own thoughts and feelings. You can do that on a phone, you can do it on your laptop, do it in a traditional journal, but really a lot of times families in chaotic or stressful situations just have a lot of thoughts and stressors. And by being able to focus, so you're not yet in therapy where you're talking it through with somebody, it's you and yourself. Journaling is very powerful. So it's probably one tip. I say it a lot. People who work with me always laugh, like, I know, let me guess, I should journal that. I'm like, yes, you should. Because it's just a very intimate place to get in touch with and sort through all the different stressors, and maybe there's a theme through them. Maybe they are separate and distinct, but until you take that time, you kind of don't know.
Yeah, it's doing the inner work. It's it's easy for us to talk about it, but when we are starting to do that inner work, it's powerful. So that's such a great tip. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I guess, almost like to go off of what you were saying when you were talking about the emotional or invisible cords that we have. When you think about family members, even if you distance yourself or you're angry with them or you move across the country, just understanding that it really does impact who we are.
Yeah.
And avoiding conflict, which is what so many people like to do, is something that isn't healthy, doesn't help us. And so I like people to get comfortable with the term confrontation. People think confrontation, they think it's no, it just means to confront, right? To confront or address something that might be happening within yourself that maybe is connected to your family. Just knowing that piece of the body keeps the score, we can't run and hide. We have those ties. And so working on them is really what I just like to encourage people to do.
I love it. This has been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much. So where can people reach out and connect with you?
They can find me on my website, drsherylziegler.com, and I've got an online course and my book and blog and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much for doing the work, because it is so important, the work that you're doing now, especially in the backdrop that we have today. So thank you all for joining in today. As always, be bold, be brave, be fearless, be the magic of you. Until next time. Teri's Wisdom Tips. Tip number 1, we must take ownership of how we show up. Are we reacting or responding? Either way, we have a direct impact on the outcome. Tip number 2, protecting your energy is a powerful way to use energy to shift the dynamic of the room as well as in your family relationships. Tip number 3, routinely cutting the energetic cords between you and your loved ones will serve to recover energy that has been lost and reestablish healthy energetic boundaries. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell to find out about my upcoming shows. Thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.